Calm.
No whining. Only expert guests and seasoned opinions. Instruction that matters. At the controls, Vincent Finelli and Mark Wright.
And we are back on USA Prepares. You are listening to USA Prepares, where there is no whining today because, Vincent, we have Bob Chapman on the phone. Vinny, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Class, we're on with Bob Chapman of the International Forecaster. And you know that you can go to usaprepares.com, ask for a copy of the International Forecaster, and we will send it out to you pronto. And you may call us at 417-200-4715, 417-200-4715, and get your free issue. I get mine twice a week. Bob, the unemployment numbers, 9.2%, just hit the news. What do you think about that? Does that make sense to you?
Well, of course it doesn't, and unfortunately our government lies about everything. Last June, the birth-death model, now the birth-death ratio, or model as it's called, is how many new jobs were created and how many jobs were lost. That's why they call it the birth-death model. And all it is something that was dreamed up about 15 years ago that's fictitious. It's used to manipulate the numbers. Last June, the BD model fabricated 131,000 jobs, which was about 61,000 less than the May 2010 numbers. For May 2011, and the BD model fabricated 206,000 jobs. June is the last month of the year in which the BD model crafts six-figure amounts of fictitious jobs. For July, the BD model deletes jobs. Based on John Williams' formula, over 200,000 jobs were lost, not the fake 18,000 gained. And real losses may have been much greater. Most of the jobs created were temporary or part-time ones. Now, that's what I've written so far this morning on the news that I've been given. So, as you can see, things are not the way that they seem to be.
So what we're saying, Bob, is that the lies are prolific. The government just will not tell us the truth, and it makes it difficult for businesses to plan, to design their going forward plans for any amount of time. They don't know whether to hire, whether to fire. They just don't know what to do. It's an awful situation.
Well, in a case like that, having been doing what I'm doing in economy and finance and things like that over the last half century, 52 years, I would tell businesses, when in doubt, don't. Mm-hmm. The same thing in the stock market. When in doubt, don't. There's no reason that you have to be compelled to do anything. So, based upon the prevailing circumstances, which you don't know what they are, keep on doing what you're doing. And if you get orders for more widgets, then say you put somebody on.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so, and you don't change your inventory because you don't know what you're going to do with it. And and part of that compromise, as I call it, for the extension of short-term debt for the United States government, in there, what they would like to do is change inventory methods. Generally speaking, it's last in, first out, last in, last out
right.
in our economy. And the reason why is because of inflation. And they want to change it to average. And that means there'll be more profits because the old widgets were manufactured or bought at lower prices because the prices are higher now. And then they can get a one-time scoop of more taxes. I mean, these people, nefarious. I mean, the public doesn't understand that. I mean, out of all the people in America that are adults, 150 million people, probably maybe 1 million of them might have had accounting. And that's probably a long shot.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's...
And so they don't know. I mean, I went through a business course. I remember what I learned, obviously. But these are the little tricks that they play to bear out what you're talking about.
I remember in accounting 101 and 102, last in, first out, and average. I mean, you could take your pick, but you couldn't keep switching.
That's right. And what they want to do is go to average so they can catch a tax windfall.
Yeah. So it's not surprising.
And of course, and listen, that'll make earnings go up temporarily as well to make things look good.
So this is really a shell game, isn't it? Where companies are manufacturing profits on paper that really don't exist. So what's happening is the shareholders that buy stock in these companies are being swindled.
So what else is new? I spent 29 years on Wall Street, owned my own firm. And I can tell you it's been going on for a long time, but it's become far more egregious in the last 20 years. I mean, there are no rules anymore, and everything goes.
Bob, when I was back in the 70s, I had a job with a Fortune 100 company, and I was a financial analyst. And I used to play the stock market during lunch hours. I'd read the Wall Street Journal, and back then there was no internet, and you'd have to have a relationship with a broker. And my broker would call me on my lunch hour, and he'd say, Vinny, listen, Houston oil is going to go up. We know it's going to go up. You need to buy it right now. And I didn't know anything about Houston oil. And so I'd say, well, I don't know anything about it. I need to do some research before I put my money there just based on some phone call. So sure enough, Houston oil would go up that day and the next day. And then it would collapse. And I was convinced, and I can't prove this, but I was convinced in my mind that what was happening is that there'd be a sales meeting early in the morning. Okay, guys, call all your clients, pump up Houston oil. We're going to drive it up because we own it already at the low price, and we're going to dump it. Do you think that happens?
Every day, 1 million times a day.
Reporters
This was back in 19...
What is even worse is secondary.
The half-brother of President Hamid Karzai,
That's
was
an offering
considered
of
one of the most
stock
powerful men in southern
from a large
Afghanistan.
shareholder, sometimes
he was
a company,
gunned down by a longtime associate. He was a
sometimes an
controversial
institution.
figure, reported to be on the
Institutions say,
CIA
well, look, we
payroll,
don't want to go on
and
and hit
alleged
the market
to have had ties
with,
to the drug trade.
let's
His brother
say,
Hamid
1 million
was often
shares
pressured
of
to
General
remove
Electric.
him from his power base,
And
but
so,
refused.
the
while
market is
Karzai was a power
$20.
broker in an area key to
And we'll
U.S.
give you
war
the
efforts.
stock at 18 and a half. And the brokerage house takes it in, has a sales meeting. The guys go out and retail it all. And in that process, all they have to do is wipe out the existing purchase of 1 million shares. And they do that. And that's how they work off secondaries. And usually the stock would be put on in the secondary to the client at $20 without commission. But they don't know that they bought the stock at 18 and a half. And then the company, what it does is the brokerage company reallows the broker. So 5% of $20, which is a very good commission, it was normal in those days, would be a point. And they bought it at 1.5, so the house would keep a half a point, and the brokers would get a point, and the buyer would get it at $20. It didn't matter whether GE was a good or a bad company. So that's how they do it.
So it's class. Think of it this way: the market is manipulated, and if you're a little guy, you're probably going to get hurt.
You don't stand a chance.
Okay, there you heard it. You heard it from the master. You don't stand a chance. So you're probably best staying out of the market and staying with things that you can hold in your hand. And you've heard Bob Chapman and me and Mark say this many, many times. Precious metals, if you can hold them. Now, this is not a commercial, but precious metals, if you can hold them, you've got something rather than a piece of paper which may or may not be a promise for something in the future. Bob, you say in an issue of your newsletter of of the 6th of this month, it's not surprising that 75% of Americans no longer trust their government.
And it isn't surprising. I mean, I think their only shortcoming is, what do I do? And what you do is you get some dehydrated and freeze-dried foods in, and get yourself a water filter and the wherewithal to defend your family. And those are the most important things for starters, because you never know when you're going to be unemployed, or you're going to have a flood or a fire on your farm or whatever. And those things are things that you have to think about. And for those of you who then further have investment funds, you've got gold and silver coins and bullion. I prefer coins because everybody knows what coins are, what they are, and they're very usable in a barter exchange if you have to go that far. And for those of you who would like to make more money, you can use gold and silver shares, which over the last 50 years I've been the world's top expert. And usually in these kind of markets, gold stocks, silver stocks will go up a minimum of 5 times more than bullion, either gold or silver. And that's why people get involved in them, because the leverage is enormous. And that can be in a depression, deflationary depression, like in the 30s when they went up over 500% and the market dropped 90%, or in the inflationary environment that we saw from 1977 to 81, where they went up 40 times more than gold bullion did. So that's why people buy shares, and you have to figure out what you think is suitable for yourself.
I think that's just exactly right, and that's why we do the Get Prepared Expo. We talk about food, water, you name it, precious metals, and